Okay. This review I probably could have done a lot sooner, and no, I am not going to have any weird, silly escapade where I either choke out a Larry the Cucumber figure, or belch on camera, or um, taking an Arthur plush doll from the '90s and then proceeding to slam him on the floor, and yeah, he actually is still over there. I'm actually amazed that he hasn't been busting apart at the seams yet. Anyway, so with all that being said, I'm going to review the first season of the YouTube Red series, Cobra Kai. And this is kind of falling in a long line of extensions or reimaginings of old classic 80s movies. And in all fairness, this movie or this TV series, it does a lot of the right things. It focuses. It's kind of interesting that it focuses more on Johnny because with Daniel Larusso, it focuses on both of them. But I think Johnny is more interesting simply because they make him really pathetic in the first few episodes. Like he's still torn up and disgraced over the loss in 1984, and season one took place in 2018, so last year. So he's still fuming over the fact that he lost a fight 34 years ago. And I mean, that is one criticism I have at Johnny. I mean, and even Pixels. Yes, I am referencing Adam Sandler. Just bear with me. But I do find it kind of stupid when a character messes up at something when they're in high school, and that apparently destroys their lives until the series or film in question comes in and they attempt to redeem themselves. I never really understood that. I mean, okay, put it this way: if he had screwed up and then made a lot of bad, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense because he seemed like okay with the loss at the end of the first movie and at the beginning of the second Karate Kid. It's like he accepted it. He's like, look, I did my best. My sensei's an asshole. I want to make my own life. So I think it would have made more. I don't know. I mean, I get that they're going this way to make us sympathize with Johnny a little more since he's essentially down on his luck. But one things I will praise about the first season, especially the series, is that they do make Johnny a little more complex. He's not just the one note psycho bully from the first movie. They actually make him a little more three dimensional. He wants to do right. There's a lot of things that he's messed up in his life that he's trying to redeem himself for. But a lot of people are just kind of giving him shit, and they are just seeing it as another one of his empty promises, which leads to Johnny reopening Cobra Kai and starting to teach his students the methods of karate that he was taught back from Martin Kreese. And there's a lot to get through. I'm not sure. I'll try to squeeze this in and not make it super long, but I'll just go over the main points. The main characters, the main kids in this one are Miguel Diaz, played by an actor whose name I cannot pronounce, and a bunch of other outsiders. And Daniel LaRusso, played by Ralph Macchio, is back. And William Zabka, who played Johnny in the original films, they're both back. And the story is pretty much about Johnny and Daniel as adult middle-aged men as much as it is about their kids, because Johnny does have a teenage son who never really had a father and has been very, I mean, Johnny's son Robbie has it rough. He has essentially a deadbeat dad and a mom who likes to sleep around with a bunch of men because she's a player. So he's kind of been forced to live on his own by being a rebel and, probably doing a lot of things that should land you in jail. Um, but I think the show did a great job at showing Johnny trying to rebuild his life and LaRusso's life falling apart because once Cobra Kai starts coming back to the valley, Danny starts getting all paranoid and crazy, which understandable. I mean, he was almost beaten to death a couple times by these psychos. But I mean, for us, the audience, we can understand why Daniel is going crazy with trying to counteract Cobra Kai being brought back. But then on the flip side, we can kind of see that Daniel's wife is kind of looking at this like, that was 34 years ago. Do you really think they're still like that? So I mean, it's kind of like you can see Daniel's side of the argument, but then you can see where his wife is coming from. It's like, yeah, you have a point to be concerned, but you're kind of going too far if you're concerned in some cases. Um, and I will say this: the high school stuff that they do deal with in the show, it is pretty well done. But that kind of leads me to my one major downgrade. Well, that's one of my complaints with the show is that Daniel has two kids, a overweight, spoiled kid named Anthony, and he has a daughter who's the pretty innocent girl, Samantha. And here's my major complaint with Samantha. She seems like a very smart, intelligent, sympathetic person, but she's hanging out with the girls in school and the kids in school that pretty much treat anyone that's not picture perfect like garbage. So, considering how smart Sam's character is, it is kind of hard for me to buy that she's not getting the hint as fast as she should. But then again, teenage boys and teenage girls, neither teenage gender is known for being smart. So both guys and girls are stupid for the same reasons at that age at some points. Um, so I do think that's kind of a downgrade, but I do like when she gets rejected by her new friends and then she gets rejected by her old friends that she abandoned and such. I do like how she kind of has to work her way back from rock bottom after having her social life train wrecked. I did like how she came back from that and she still soldiered on. She didn't bitch and moan. She just kind of quietly and sulked on. She did her best. So I do appreciate that. And even then, even though Sam is with the wrong people at the beginning of the series, you can still tell there's a really good young woman in there that is just kind of confused and lost at that point, but doesn't realize that they're lost. At least not until she sees her friends make a fat shaming meme over her real friend and her supposed boyfriend tries to make crude advances on her, but she physically rebuffs him on using a little karate. Yeah, and I know. Yeah, please don't kill me. I don't know martial arts yet, so that little finger flip thing, just ignore that. Anyway, so I thought that the teenage stuff was well done. I do think the acting's actually really good. I mean, the writing, as basic and simplistic as the script is, and some of the dialogue is, there are some points where you do see some real character development, like where Daniel is trying to help Johnny buy a car, and they end up spending the afternoon talking in a bar. You know, you do kind of get the sense that there is at least there is some character development there, and it is kind of cool how Johnny is still kind of a prick throughout this first season, but as the season progresses, you do kind of see that he is essentially a sympathetic anti-hero. You know, it's like, okay, we know he's messed up in the past. We know he's still kind of a dick, but you can tell that he's trying to do things right. He's trying to redeem himself, and even though his methods are still being very misguided, he's at least trying to do the right thing. You know what I mean? So there is a lot of good stuff there. The fight choreography is really good. One of my favorite fights in this series is when the main kid Miguel fights off one of the bullies. That was a lot of fun to watch, and it's even more satisfying because those bullies were the same jackasses that assaulted him at a little shopping center when Johnny was trying to get dinner, and Johnny came in and kicked the bullies' butts. And it is kind of funny. It is kind of cool to see some of these shy, sheepish, nerdy outcast characters become more aggressive and, you know, a little too violent for their own good, but it is kind of showing how far they've come from the meek and unheard to the more pronounced and aggressive. That there are a lot of cool contrasts with that. Um, there is a lot of 80s music being referenced in there since essentially it's a sequel from an 80s movie. So the soundtrack's really good. And there is a very interesting cliffhanger at the end of the first season. And for those of you who've seen the series, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, I'm not sure where you'd be able to find a way to watch it because I don't think the first season episodes are not free anymore on YouTube, but I'm sure you could find them somewhere on a streaming service, maybe. But the season one cliffhanger is pretty interesting, and it does kind of bode well for having a more intriguing season two. So I didn't give away too many spoilers. I still have a spoiler thing down there at the bottom just to be safe because I did give away some key plot points. But overall, I do think what's really interesting. The last thing I'll say is what's interesting is that even though Daniel at the beginning of the series seems to have his life together, as I said, when Cobra Kai comes back into play, he starts losing it a little bit, and you do kind of get the sense that he's starting to not know how to raise his own kids. Like he's a successful businessman, don't get me wrong, but he's having a hard time dealing with Sam's teenage problems and Anthony's sort of I just want to plug into my computer and not paying attention to anybody kind of thing. So there are some very modern problems, and I do like that Daniel is kind of oblivious to the fact that his daughter is doing some things that she shouldn't be doing. But again, no one's perfect. So I do think there's a lot of great stuff about this series. I am really interested to see how the rest of season two plays out. I kind of know how season two ends, but I'll get to that for another time. I'm not sure what I'm going to review next week, but